Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Today a gel printing session where I'm going to share with you 10 mark makers you're going to want to get. They're all cheap and inexpensive and easily sourced. So I will be using two 8x10 gel plates in this video. And the reason I do that, it allows me to use various techniques and different ways to get gel prints. And I'll explain this as we go through the video. For the most part, I'm using medium-bodied Liquitex Basic paint and this speedball brayer. So let's get started. Number one mark maker is this floral sink liner. This is only half of it, so you could easily buy it and share it with a friend. So here I've put it into the paint and I've transferred it onto the other page using the other plate as a squishy surface to get a better transfer. And then I'm pulling it off on a base coat that I had. Now I have a stash of gel prints to the left side that need a little something something. So I'll be going through those to pull off prints. As you can see, I'm using old shipping papers, recycled paper to use to make my gel prints and my collage papers. Most of my gel prints I use as collage papers. I love using them, and you see me using them in a lot of my videos. We're going to see this. This is a shelf liner and it has a small dot on it, and it is one of the workhorses in my studio. Here I'm just transferring it on, using it as a stamp to get those little dots to add to what was already a lovely gel print or collage paper. We're going to see more with this later on. So back to this floral sink liner. So here I'm getting a coat of paint on it and pushing it down, stamping it onto a base coat of color. Now there's more paint on here, so I'm just transferring it onto the second pad, or plate I should say. There I'm adding a little bit more. Now I'm going to want to let this dry, and then I'll be putting on color. But I'm going to pull off this one. So because there was so much paint, I pulled it off. I got one print and I still have some lovely design on it. So I'm going to let that side, the right side, dry now so that I can pull it off with the color. Now I have sped up this video to 2 times. And I'm aware most people don't want me to speed up the gel print videos too fast because they can't see it. If you don't want to hear the tips and tricks along the way, you can mute me and speed up the video. But I will show all the prints at the end with the mark makers that I used. Now I'm using a lot of the same colors throughout this video. I'm limiting myself to probably under 10 colors with black and white. And this is all from one mark maker, and look at the variety that you get. So I recommend when you have a new mark maker, spend time with different colors and different techniques, really putting it through its paces and see all the possibilities that it can give you. You'll be amazed. So here I'm using that shelf liner again, and I'm going to transfer some of this quinacridone magenta on top of the black. It's a little detail, but when I use this as a collage paper, having that pink in it allows me to use it on a page that does have pink. So here's the dot shelf liner. But as I said, this one I use a lot in of itself like you're seeing me doing here, and is adding black or white detail to an already good print. I love this. This is a good basic neutral, and I've used that multiple times. There's still more on the plate, so let it dry and let's pull it off. I am just using regular copy paper. Some of it's recycled. Look at that yumminess, this grunge that comes off, as well as the mark from the mark making tool from this shelf liner. Now this is a hexagon silicone trivet, and I got this from Dollarama in Canada. You get both, you get two of them, and I've used this as a stamp right onto my art journal, and I haven't really used it on my gel plate. So this is the first time. So I'm using this as a stamp. I'm tapping it into the wet paint on the right side and then stamping it onto the second plate, where I'll let it dry, and then I'll put a coat of paint and pull it off. Now to get the transfer, you're going to want it to be fairly wet paint. So you're going to have to play with it. Depending on the paint that you use, you're going to have to add more or less. It's trial and error. So I had the transfer, I stamped onto this plate. So now I'm applying color so that I can pull off that print. If it's not coming off completely, put it back down and give it a little bit more time. Loving that look. Now, a lot of my collage papers I don't use as a whole sheet. Now this is the Waves Sink Liner. And it has a double-sided. It has a wider wave and a thinner wave. And again, it's the size of a sink, so you get lots. Here I've cut them so I could use them completely on my 8x10 plates. I'm just using it as a stamp here. I love how imperfect it is, adding that little bit of grunge and that little bit of pattern. And there's a pull-off print. Here I'm using it as stamp again. Putting it on top of the second plate gives it a squishy surface, and I get a better transfer. You can use a silicone mat if you don't have a second plate. So here I'm just transferring it onto the second plate, which I will now let it dry and then remove. But while that's drying, I'm pulling off the second plate. I hate waiting for paint to dry on the gel plate. At the end of the video, I show all 10 of the mark makers and the prints that I created with them. Love this cross weave pattern that I got using that Waves one. And look at this absolute gorgeous grunge. So the prints that you're seeing me put there are things that need a little something extra. Didn't that just bump it up a whole lot? When I'm doing collage papers and gel prints, I like to have different color combinations. So yellow with pink and blue with green and black with all the colors. That gives me usability when I use them in my art journal or my mixed media pieces. Now this ink liner, because it's a large piece, I was able to cut it into smaller pieces. This allows me to use as a stamp right onto my art journal pages, or to just have smaller areas like you see me doing here. And again, I encourage you, just have fun with it. Take one or two, or a limited amount of mark makers and really put them through their paces. See what they can do. Do different things and see what you can come up with. And I find that as I get going in the process, I get more and more ideas. Now this, number 5, is a Lego base. You can get these smaller sizes, and this gives these nice dots that you can use. Now it's a little harder, so I find I need to use more paint if the surface isn't silicone. But putting it on the second gel plate to use as a squishy surface really helps. This Lego base, again, is something that I got at the Dollar Tree. So most of these, either you have them in your kitchen or you can inexpensively get them at Dollar Tree, Dollarama, Walmart. I think the sink liners I paid probably $7, but still, as a mark maker, that is great value because you get so much. And I mean, when you consider how much we spend for stencils and stamps, it's still inexpensive. So spend time going through the kitchen area of the dollar stores or discount stores. So here I'm pulling off the print. After it dries, I put a coat of wet paint, brayer that on, a thin layer, and here I'm just using it as a stamp pad. If you turn it the other way, it sometimes is easier to transfer. So I'm stamping it into the wet paint, turning it upside down, and then pressing the paper onto it. And that will work with any of these mark makers. If you're not getting a good transfer, try flipping it. Loving the dots. And here we have purple with the light blue permanent. So like I said, different color combinations, and that gives me lots of options when I go to create. So you can always find the perfect paper. And then I sort them by basic color in my file folder system. So this one, I'm using a plastic embroidery mesh. You're going to see that later, but I brought it out because I was adding some detail to this. So we have lots left on the plate. So after it dries, I'm putting a coat of red, and then I'm going to pull that print and get ready to see some yumminess. So the shelf liner, the Lego base, and the embroidery mesh are all ones that I would layer up on other ones. But look at that. Oh, that was so gorgeous. You'll see it more slowly later on. And here's even more. Look at that grunge. So here's the plastic embroidery mesh. Again, I got it at the Dollar Tree. So $1.50 in Canada, $1.25 in the States. But when you pull it off, inevitably it leaves a lot, so you're getting an imperfect print, but it gives you that grunge. It gives you something to pull off later. If it's not coming off, give it a little bit more time. Sometimes if it's not coming off completely, that's because I've put too much paint. But I don't mind, that just gives me more grunge and for later. So this is another trivet. This one is a floral. Again, I got this at Dollarama, and you get 2 of them. Now, I regret that I didn't spend enough time playing with, there's 3 silicone trivets. Every couple months they come up with another one at Dollarama, and I just always nab it because I love using them. They make perfect stamps, which you can use right on your art journal or on your gel plate. So I think I'll have another video coming up where I'm just going to use these 3 silicone trivets and really experiment more with them, because I think I've barely touched the surface in my usability. I'm thinking of actually cutting some of them apart. Not sure. So if you know you like to create with teal and purple, you can make gel prints that are going to fit that. And adding that little bit of grunge in the background, that just even makes it better. You really can't get better collage papers than gel prints because you just can't duplicate it. These are one of a kind. Even if I tried to do the exact same thing, I would never hit it right out. So as I'm creating and I get excess papers, I just throw it in a bin and it keeps it. And then when I do a gel printing session, I just reuse those papers. Nothing goes to waste. So this is a very faint impression, but that's okay because if I'm not satisfied with it, I'll just add another layer using the same mark maker or a different one. I tried deliberately not to jump around from the different mark makers for this video, for the sake of the video, but you don't have that limitation. And here again, look at these lovely markings that you get. Now the advantage to using these mark makers as opposed to stencils and stamps that you purchase is there's no copyright issues. You can, what you create, you can use. You can sell, you can do whatever you want with them. And they're original. Nobody else is going to have the exact one that you have. Ooh, yum. But just wait, I'm not done. Remember that plastic embroidery mesh? I said it's a good one for adding to something that you already have, just bumping it up. And here I'm applying the paint right on it. And then I'm going to apply it, reverse stamp kind of thing. And look at that. It just turned it from okay to wow. So here I'm using the one pad as basically a stamp pad and applying the ink. And there I've added that mesh thing because I love it. Here's the third of those trivets. Oh, sorry for the spelling error. And we are going in circles. Now I could have just transferred this and then put a base color. That would have made a good background, but I just kept going. But that's what I mean. I've barely touched the surface of these trivets, of maximizing them. So if you'd like to see me see what they can do in another video, tell me that in the comment section below. Yum. We just want interesting marks because for the most part, again, when I use those collage paper, I'm cutting it up. I'm using part of it. Red and teal work really well together. These are complementary colors. And as long as you don't mix them wet and wet, you're okay. Yum. You can't quite see the red there, but it is red and it'll show up. Prussian blue, one of my favorite darks to use. Here I'm just putting the paint on it, brayering the paint on, and I'm going to press the paper, kind of a reverse stamp. And just added that little bit of something. But this is how we layer it up and build interest. Now this is a plastic serving tray. Now I got this from a thrift store, but I've seen similar kind of patterns at Dollar Tree. Flip the trays and see what's underneath them. Now again, this is a hard surface, so you're going to need wetter paint to get a good transfer. So I'm doing a combination of just a regular gel print, which is what you just saw, using it as a stamp pad, transferring it onto the second plate. And then there's the pull-off prints that give you those grungy wonderfulness. I love the patterning this makes. Just more recycled paper. I printed out some sentiments. These are ones that I didn't use. Yummy. Stuff left on the plate, let it dry. Apply a contrasting color, complementary color. Sometimes you're going to pick the right color and it's going to be wonderful, and sometimes not. If it's not great, you just add another layer. Don't overthink it. Here I'm stamping. I had some teal with the plate. Now I'm using some purple, and I've put that on that second plate, letting it dry. And when it's dry, I'll put a coat of paint. This time I'm using white. And that gives you kind of that frosty look. So use one mark maker, use different colors, right? Limited colors, limited mark makers, and just really play with them. If you're using stencils, just use a few. Because you get too much, it gets overwhelming. This gel printing session was about under 2 hours. Yum. Now I could use that to make leaves. I can use that to cut out fish that I collage. Paper piecing. I have a playlist called Gel Printing, Make Them and Use Them. Oh, yum. I love the green with the blue. And all that grunge. Here's a print. I love the colors, but there's not a whole lot going on here. So let's add some detail. I think I'm using Payne's Gray here. And we're still on this plastic tray. And I'm using it as a stamp to add some interest to this background. And look, it just popped. Adding that contrast. Now this could be an Insta background for an art journal page. Glue it down and keep creating. I know in my stash I don't have enough darks. I don't have enough black to go with some, you know, when I'm making pages. So I'm making an effort to get some black collage papers made. Now here, Tupperware lid, but look at the beautiful design. Wait till you see some of the gel prints I create with this mark maker. This one I got at the thrift store. Great place to source out kitchen stuff that you can repurpose for your gel printing. So I'm letting that dry, and I will pull this other one. But because it's black, I'm using some recycled paper. You're not going to see the print anyways. Take things out of the recycle bin. I'm adding some pink to this, which is going to create one of my favorite prints of the day. I ain't gonna lie. Both of these prints are amongst the top 10 from my day, from my gel printing session. This is gold. Look at this. Oh. And look at this one. 2 winners. Those could be Insta backgrounds. Great covers for composition books. I decided I want to add some gold to this one. I want to bump it up even more. As much as I love it, I want to do more. So I'm spreading the gold, and I'm going to use that Lego base, press it down. Now I don't have the squishiness because I got paint on it, so I'm really pressing hard, made sure I had lots of wet paint, and look, I bumped it up even more. I'm going to add some gold to this one. I love gel prints that have gold in them already. You know me, I love my shimmer and shine. Waiting for that one to dry. Look at the grunge on that. These ones, these grungy bits, they just make me happy. I recently released my possibility packs at NINNYSNAPKINS.com, where I've put together many of my gel prints in a coordinated bunch of papers that you can purchase. So you can get one-of-a-kind gel prints from my stash to yours, but there's so much more. Go to NINNYSNAPKINS.com and check it out. Adding green with gold. This is really wet, so it's not lifting as quickly. So you just give it more time. But I'm impatient, so I will lift it and then I'll get more prints. And there isn't such a thing as a bad print. Maybe one's not done yet, but there's no such thing as a bad print. So there's still gold on there, so I'm adding some red. And I use the brayer, as you see, to help make good contact and pull it up. And there you got that shimmer of gold on that. I don't want all my gel prints, all my collage papers to have a lot of detail. Some I want simpler. Like you can always add more later on. Back to the sink liner, just adding a little bit of detail to some base prints that I have. And again, just adding one more layer of interest. Transfer onto the plate. Pull off. There was still some gold there, so it's come, you can see that. Added a little bit of red, not much transfer, the paint was a little dry. Here I'm going to transfer it on top of something that's already been transferred onto the second plate. I'm going to let that dry and then I'll pull it off after putting a coat of paint on it. Yum. You never quite know what you're getting when you gel printing. But a gel printing session is always good creative fun. I just thoroughly enjoy doing gel printing. There I put light aqua, and then I'm going to pull off both of them. That one got a little busy, but we'll make it work. So here is the floral sink liner and the prints that I was able to get. You can see some variations in them. You've got first prints, you've got grunge prints, you've got prints with other mark makers on there. Beautiful. This is the Lego base. That's with the Wavy sink liner as well, some just by itself. But look at all the variation. One mark maker and different effects. This is the shelf liner. This is one of those workhorses in my studio. I love that. And this one. And I'll make lots of those. One day I'll just use that shelf liner and make lots of prints. The plastic serving tray. And again, you can see the variations, whether you've used it as a stamp, whether you've used it directly on the plate. Love that one. Ooh, yeah. And this one, oh my word. These silicone trivets from Dollarama, I do have to play with them more. I don't think I've even touched the surface of what I can do with these. Combining with the embroidery, plastic embroidery one. Here's these two. They've had that embroidery mesh. And then look at these. Oh, this one really makes grungy ones. The lid from the Tupperware. Gold. The video's about to end. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your favorite mark maker is. And the Wavy sink liner. Until next time, go get creative.